The one where Ross meets Elizabeth's dad is a pretty fantastic episode of Friends. In fact, I think I laughed more at this one than I have done in any episode in quite a while. Even though I know the jokes that are coming, I absolutely love it. This is the 21st episode of the 6th season. It's directed by Michael Lembeck. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And there are 3 parts to the narrative. One, of course, focusing on Elizabeth's father, and one on Joey, and one on Phoebe, Monica, and Chandler. I'll talk very briefly about those 2 stories with Joey, Phoebe, Monica, and Chandler, and then I'll go in with Elizabeth's father, because I have quite a lot of thoughts there, all of which are positive. So Joey is, as we know, the lead in Mac and Cheese, but he said some rather unkind things about the robot. He wasn't very impressed with Cheese, and it looks like he might be getting fired as soon as he started the job. We have a pretty funny phone call from Estelle, where she phones Joey, saying she might be able to get him an audition because the lead in Mac and Cheese doesn't know he might be getting fired. Some agent doesn't realise that Joey is the lead in Mac and Cheese, and Joey is panicking, of course. And Wayne, who is played by Andrew Bilgore, tells Joey that he will make sure he can keep his job if he helps him be better with women. Wayne runs the robot, or manages the robot, and he's not very good with women. We have this brilliant scene where Joey and Chandler are with Wayne, and Wayne's talking about how he's not good with women, and Chandler is just understanding all of it, which is rather sweet, because Chandler's no longer in that situation, which is quite nice, and Joey agrees to help him, and he gets to keep his job, and I think that was a nice way to wrap things up there. Part of the narrative focuses on, as I said, Phoebe, Monica, and Chandler. And Phoebe is writing a book, and she's basically writing this book about Monica and Chandler. Everything they're doing, she's writing down, and they don't like this, which I have to say is fair enough. I don't think I'd like it if somebody were to catalogue my every move. And then Monica and Chandler get into an argument because they were supposed to meet at 6 or 7. And they're both arguing, saying, we said 6, we said 7. And Phoebe knows, because it's in her book. And what I particularly love about this is that not only did she know, but she knew that they were going to, well, one of them was going to miss it, because one thought 6 and one thought 7. I love the fact that she knew that, but because they'd bad-mouthed her book, she wasn't going to intervene. And I rather liked that a lot. And one of my favourite lines as well is when Chandler has to butter her up to get her to tell what the book says, and he says she's the queen of everything. And Phoebe says, thank you, so are you. And Chandler's response was just brilliant. So I really enjoyed that part of the narrative as well. Then we come to Elizabeth's father. This is, of course, Paul Stevens, played by Bruce Willis. And I think he is absolutely fantastic. And they meet in Central Park. Ross is making jokes. It's clearly not going down very well. The others are there to support him. And honestly, it's so well written. There's a point where Monica says it's unusual for Ross to be there during the day. He's usually volunteering at the children's hospital. To which Phoebe adds, not looking for dates. Obviously implying that Ross likes them young. And it's not a great meeting. It definitely isn't. And then when everybody has left, Paul is actually looking for his keys. He seems to have lost them. And Rachel is there on her own. And they get to talking. And the next thing we know, Ross goes into Joey's apartment, and Rachel is on the couch with Paul. Well, making out with Paul. Ross's reaction was great, but Rachel's response, I was just getting him to like you, I rather thoroughly enjoyed. And the next thing we know, they're on a double date. Ross and Elizabeth, and Rachel and Paul. And I loved how this scene in particular played out. There are some really, really funny moments here. And Rachel is obviously trying to big Ross up in front of Paul, and it doesn't go according to plan, but she goes off to the bathroom, and Paul finally says to him, you're not all bad. I still look at Lizzie like she's a 12-year-old girl, implying that he doesn't want his little girl to grow up and date a fully grown man, which is fair enough. And after Paul says, I still look at Lizzie like a 12-year-old girl, Ross responds, I know what you mean, I do that too. And I think it was immediately obvious to us as viewers what he meant, but obviously Paul isn't aware that he has a son. and he had to explain what he meant about still seeing Ben as a little baby. And Ross mentions Carol and how he and her are separated, obviously. And Rachel comes back in just as Paul is saying, I didn't realise you were married. To which Rachel responds, we were. And it takes her a second to realise they weren't talking about her marriage, if you can call it a marriage, to Ross. And she tries to dig herself out of this hole and says, oh, you were talking about Emily. And Ross just drops his head to the table because obviously he wasn't. And it's just a very, very funny scene. I really thoroughly enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun with it. I've mentioned before, I don't care for Elizabeth as a character. I don't dislike her. For example, I actively dislike Emily. I think she's a very bad person. Not that bad things haven't happened to her, but I still think she's a bad person. But with Elizabeth, I just don't care for her, but I definitely don't actively dislike her. I don't know, I've just never found her that interesting. But I'm so glad we have Elizabeth because it gives us the scenes with Paul. And I'll say no more about Mr. Stevens. I think this is an absolutely fantastic episode. If you were to ask me to name my top 10, 20, 30 Friends episodes, I honestly don't think I would have named this one. But watching it now, I found this to be very, very funny. Maybe it's just the mood I'm in, I'm not sure, but I laughed quite extensively and I rather enjoyed it. So, needless to say, the one where Ross meets Elizabeth's dad did not go well for Ross, but I'd say for us as viewers, it was very well indeed, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this episode.